Have you ever wondered when humans first began to love? Was love our greatest invention, an emotional revolution? Or was it simply a survival instinct shaped and sharpened over millions of years? Love, the force behind music, poetry, war, and family. But when did it truly begin? And more importantly, why did we, among all species, start to love at all? To answer that, we'll need to travel back, way back into the Stone Age, when emotions were raw, instincts ruled the brain, and life was nothing but a fight to stay alive. In that brutal world, love wasn't a luxury, it was a strategy. This is the story of how a survival mechanism evolved into one of the deepest, most complex emotions humans have ever known. A story not just about feelings, but about the very nature of being human. Imagine this. You're a prehistoric human, living hundreds of thousands of years ago. Every single day is a battle. There's no electricity, no running water, no one to leave you on red because, well, there are no messages to begin with. What there is hunger, cold, wild predators. And if you ever get separated from your group, death could come very quickly. In that kind of world, emotional attachment wasn't romantic, it was necessary. Our ancestors, from Homo habilis to Homo sapiens, gradually developed the capacity to bond with one another, especially after mating. That bond didn't come from moonlight or music. It came from chemicals, oxytocin, dopamine, hormones that made staying close feel rewarding. These neurochemicals evolved not to make love poetic, but to make sticking together a biological advantage. Love in its earliest form wasn't about affection for affection's sake. It was about increasing the odds of survival, staying together longer to protect one another, raise fragile offspring, and share scarce resources in a dangerous world. And surprisingly, even the idea of monogamy, often thought of as a cultural invention, may have biological roots. Some primates naturally form pair bonds to raise their young. Our ancestors might have followed that same pattern, not because they believed in romance, but because it helped their children survive. And human children need a lot of time to grow. In other words, love began as a kind of evolutionary armor, not to have someone to hold at night, but to stay alive long enough to reproduce and pass on our genes. So before there were love songs, poems, or vows, there was strategy. Bonding was survival. And love, before it ever became beautiful, was first and foremost practical. At first, it was all instinct, chemical signals, evolutionary programming. But over time, something unexpected began to emerge, something that couldn't be fully explained by biology alone: emotion. Not just staying close to survive, but missing someone when they're gone, worrying about them, feeling pain at their absence. Somewhere along the evolutionary path, that instinctive bond deepened. It became personal. This shift happened as humans, social creatures by nature, developed greater awareness of themselves and others. Our brains grew more complex, and with that came the capacity not just to act out of instinct, but to feel in response to another person's presence, absence, joy, or suffering. There were no words yet, no love letters, no whispered promises, but the feelings, they were already there, and they were powerful. Anthropologists have found fascinating evidence of this emotional shift. Grave sites where two individuals appear to have been buried together. Signs of long-term care for elderly or disabled group members. Individuals who would not have survived without the support of others. These clues suggest something more than mere cohabitation. They suggest emotional investment, concern, maybe even love. Picture a hunter returning to camp. Someone had waited. Their eyes meet. No words are exchanged, but that glance carries ownership, gratitude, relief. In those moments, never written down, never recorded, the seeds of real human love were already taking root. More importantly, these lasting emotional bonds helped form small communities, groups built not just on proximity, but on trust. Love wasn't private anymore. It became social glue. From primal instinct, love began evolving into part of who we are. Not just a tool for survival, but a deeply human experience, a reason to stay, a reason to care, and in that transformation, love became something new. Not just a mechanism to survive, but a way to survive together. So when did love stop being solely about making babies? The answer lies in the moment humans began to choose. Not just choosing the strongest mate or the one with the most food, but the one who made them feel safe. The one who stayed. That subtle shift marked a major turning point in the emotional evolution of our species. Even in prehistoric times, without roses or midnight texts, love was already becoming selective. Not just anyone would do. Who hunted patiently beside you? Who didn't run when you were injured? Who stood between you and a predator? Slowly, feelings began to form towards specific individuals. Bonds that weren't just functional, but personal. Some scientists refer to this as selective emotional bonding. That's when an individual doesn't just pair with whoever is convenient or beneficial, but with someone who makes them feel something. Someone who matters just because they are who they are. And in certain indigenous communities that still retain elements of early human life, researchers have observed behaviors that look unmistakably like love. Courtship rituals, jealousy, even heartbreak. All of which point to one essential truth. Humans have long loved not just to live, but to live with meaning. So yes, love began as a survival mechanism, but as our brains, emotions, and cultures evolved, it became more than that. It became the very reason to keep surviving with someone. A connection that, once purely chemical, had grown into the most intimate and uniquely human form of attachment. Love isn't exclusive to humans. Many animals show affection. They cuddle, groom, even display jealousy. Take chimpanzees, our closest relatives. They comfort each other, seek touch, sulk when ignored. It feels familiar, doesn't it? And yet, there's still a profound difference between what animals feel and what humans experience. For animals, bonding tends to be functional. It helps raise offspring, defend territory, secure social rank. A pair of swans might stay together for life, but do they understand romantic love? Do they remember anniversaries in their minds? Wonder what could have been? Or ache with longing? Probably not. But humans, when we love, we remember, we imagine, we hope. Love becomes a long, winding experience in the mind. It's not just something we feel in a moment. It's a story we live over time, one filled with memory, expectation, and pain. The difference comes down to consciousness and imagination. Humans know they are in love. We reflect on it, worry about it, overthink it. We rehearse conversations in our heads. We dream of the future. We grieve not just the loss of a person, but the future we imagined with them. That's something animals, no matter how social, can't truly do. So yes, when you see two dogs curled up together or birds mating for life, it's touching. It even resembles our own relationships. But it's only in the human mind that love becomes a layered emotional world, a place full of longing, silence, music, memory, and meaning. Love didn't start with humans, but we gave it its complexity and its poetry. What truly sets human love apart from animal attachment? The answer lies in a specific region of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. This is the area responsible for imagination, long-term thinking, decision-making, and emotional complexity. Unlike most animals, who live almost entirely in the present, we can envision the future. We can replay the past, and we can wonder, what if I lose them? What if they stop loving me? That's what gives human love its depth and its torment. Because we don't just remember our loved ones, we remember how it felt to be with them. We recall their voice, their scent, the tiniest, most fleeting details, the way they looked at us once across a fire, the rhythm of their breathing while they slept. Love becomes more than a reaction. It becomes a mental world, multidimensional, vivid, and hard to leave. And with that richness comes suffering. Only humans, it seems, can feel rejected over a scenario that never happened. Only we can have our hearts broken by an imagined future that didn't come true. In a strange twist of evolution, intelligence made love more beautiful, but also more difficult. Eventually, we began giving names to these feelings. Longing, tenderness, jealousy, regret. We turned emotions into language. And once we did that, love became more than an instinct. It became a symbol, a story. The person we love is no longer just our companion. They become a character in a narrative we're writing in our own heads, complete with drama, hope, and dread. That's how love evolved from biology into fiction. From a purely adaptive behavior, it became something like an inner movie, where each of us writes the script, directs the scenes, and lives with the consequences of every twist. One day, somewhere along the ancient human timeline, something changed. Instead of just holding one another in silence, our ancestors began to say how they felt. They looked into each other's eyes and spoke. That moment changed love forever. Language, even in its earliest, clumsiest form, gave emotion a voice. It didn't need to be poetic, just a sound, a phrase, a primitive sentence, enough to carve a mark into someone's mind. And suddenly, love wasn't just a private feeling. It became something that could be shared, told, heard. People started talking about who they loved, complaining, boasting, reminiscing. They composed sounds and dances to express longing. And just like that, something new was born, a culture of love. No other species had ever done this before. Love now had shape, form, and meaning beyond the individual. It became part of group identity. Who I love became a statement, a status, sometimes even a spark for conflict. Communities began to take interest. Who belonged with whom? Who had the right to love whom? Love was no longer just personal, it was public. Symbols emerged, animal tooth necklaces, shared food, specific gestures reserved only for that one person. These weren't just tokens. They were the first proof that love had stepped outside the body, outside the brain, and into the world. And when love is spoken, repeated, remembered, it begins to live longer than the people who first felt it. That's how love became culture. In the beginning, a glance was enough, a hand on the shoulder, a quiet moment shared under shelter. That was how our ancestors expressed love, wordlessly but deeply. But once language came along, love changed forever. Now people didn't just feel love, they said it. I need you. You're mine. You've changed. With words, love gained clarity, but also fragility. Because the moment we name a feeling, we create expectations around it. Expectations that the other person feels the same, responds the way we imagined, loves us the way we've begun to describe. And as you probably know, the higher the expectation, the greater the risk of disappointment. That was when love first became an internal conflict between what we say and what we actually feel. We began to explain, negotiate, even lie, not out of malice, but in the desperate hope of keeping love the way it was, even when it no longer was. Love became layered, emotional, yes, but also linguistic, strategic. Those who mastered the right words could preserve love. One wrong sentence, though, could tear it apart. And perhaps the deepest pain came when someone said, I love you, without meaning it, or stayed silent when they loved someone with their whole heart. Language, the greatest gift of humanity, became a double-edged sword. It let us speak love beautifully, but also made love more delicate than ever before. Once humans could say, I love you, they began doing something even more powerful. They started telling stories about love. Around flickering fires between tales of hunts and gods came another kind of story. The kind where someone crossed rivers and forests to find the one they lost, where a mother abandoned her tribe to follow the man she loved. These weren't just dramatic tales. They became templates, early prototypes of what true love should look like. And the moment love became a story, it began to come with roles. People didn't just feel love anymore. They began to perform it, to love the way others loved, to mimic passion, sacrifice, and devotion, just like the characters in those stories. Love, once spontaneous, began to follow scripts. You didn't just love someone for who they were. You loved them because they fit a role you had imagined. A hero, a soulmate, a rescuer, a muse. And if your real-life relationship didn't resemble the myth, you started questioning whether it was love at all. Why am I not suffering like they did? Why won't they fight for me like in the stories? Love became theatrical, cultural, a set of expectations built on legend and fiction. And when your partner failed to act out the part you'd assigned them, disappointment, frustration, heartbreak followed. Ironically, language gave us the power to say, I love you, but also led us to love in ways we didn't fully understand, trying to live out someone else's narrative instead of feeling our own. By now, love had language, it had stories, it had roles, and with all that came rules. Suddenly, love wasn't just about two people and how they felt. It was about family, community, status, law, religion, honor. Everyone had an opinion on who you should love, how you should love, and why. In the earliest times, all you needed was a glance, a shared shelter, a bone passed across the fire. But as societies grew more complex, love became a social decision, sometimes heavier than emotion itself. You couldn't just fall for someone. You had to fall for the right person, the one with the proper bloodline, the approved rank, the blessing of the group. And if you didn't, you could be judged, forbidden, even cast out. Love became a battlefield, not just between two hearts, but between desire and structure. Some couples were forced apart for being from the wrong tribe. Others married without love, simply because it had to be done. Some loved each other their entire lives, but never dared to say it aloud. When love collided with language, custom, and social order, it lost a piece of its wild, instinctive freedom. But in that very tension between what the heart wanted and what the world demanded, something new emerged. We began to suffer for love, fight for it, choose it, knowing the cost. Maybe love started as biology, but once we learned to speak, to tell stories, to resist, love became a symbol. Not just an emotion, but a declaration, a belief, a way for humans to say, this is who I am, even when everything else tells me I shouldn't be. And that's what made love deep and beautiful, and yes, painful. From silent glances in ancient caves to whispered confessions under moonlight, human love has traveled a long way. It didn't begin as poetry. It wasn't born from music. It started as survival, raw, biological, instinctive. But over tens of thousands of years, it evolved, it deepened, it became layered with meaning, memory, imagination, and choice. Love helped us stay alive. But more than that, it helped us feel alive. It gave us the capacity to dream, to suffer, to hope, to long for someone across distances, both physical and emotional. It became a story passed down through symbols, through words, through generations. A story each of us continues to write in our own way.